Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stewart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Stewart Best, and tonight we have Larry Taylor and we have Randy Yarbrough with us, and we're going to just kind of wander around and have a good conversation. And although we've got it scheduled for 2 hours, it doesn't have to necessarily go that long, and it probably could go a whole lot longer if you wanted to cover all the news. All kinds of things are going on out there, and the news is just piling up. And not all of it's good. Hi, guys. How you doing tonight?
Oh, thank you for having me, Stewart.
Oh, hey, no problem. How about you, Randy? How are you doing?
Well, it's a wonderful day in our global neighborhood. We skip down the yellow brick road to prosperity. Yes.
Yeah, I noticed. I noticed the last headlines, so, and then, of course, Obama said that anybody said that the economy wasn't improving by leaps and bounds was actually lying. But I think the statistics would tell us otherwise. But maybe statistics don't mean anything. We're going to start the show maybe with Larry got nailed after a show we did, and we concentrated on the paranormal, the arrival, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Larry, you want to tell us about that? Because it does show that we are being targeted. I don't think people really believe it. And anybody that's worked around any kind of a ministry that actually is telling the truth would have tales to tell about everything that goes on in their daily life that nobody would believe, because other people live kind of a normal life. Let us know what happened.
Well, Stewart, interestingly, and I agree totally with you, other people don't understand. But I know, Stewart, that I sit back in awe sometimes over the years at the attacks you've suffered. And my Lord, I have no idea of the total, well, you're not going to tell it anyway, but the money value of the equipment you've lost, the equipment itself that were lost, the glitches and the problems and the even paranormal events. I mean, people just don't know. And we did this show, I guess the one before the last one we did, and I believe it's around I can't remember the date of it, 25th, I think it was, but March, and it was a paranormal show, kind of. We got into all kind of stuff. I mean, we really actually walked in some, well, I guess you could say forbidden zones. And we might have stepped on that yellow brick road a little bit, too, as we were talking, and stirred up the guy pulling the strings, at Oz. But, boy, as that show was ending, I mean, I got hammered. My computer, I had a new computer. My other one had got taken out. And, well, it got took out a few times. But then someone had helped me to get another computer, and I had it up and running and doing good. And, bam, when we did that show, I went down. I mean, I was off a few days, and, of course, at the same time, I was recovering from a health emergency, too, and it was just one problem on top of another one. But the most interesting thing, and I know I got some emails from people that said, well, if you had the type of security that I've got on my computer, you wouldn't have that problem. But, Stewart, they don't understand the abilities of not only, the three-letter agencies and others that can hit you, they don't understand the capabilities even of the spirit realm that attacks you, the demonic attacks that can move through, well, the airwaves, it can move through energy. It does all these things, but the most interesting thing, Stewart, is two of those whatever you call them, viruses, I suppose, or whatever. And listen, I had a firewall. I had all the protection that most people would have, and I thought I was doing pretty good. But interestingly, one of the things we did discuss, and I think we discussed it on a couple of shows, was matter of fact, I remember Augusto Perez and you and I were talking about Gog. a
Yes.
few shows back, and all of this. We talked about that, and of course at the same time we talked about on that show the arrival and who might be coming, and maybe it's the return of the God, so to speak, and with a little G, of course. But listen, these are the two that I identified hit my computer. One was named Gog, and it's got a long name, but the middle name in capital letters is Gog, G-O-G. And that's just exactly what we talked about. And then the other one that was discovered was Artemis, A-R-T-E-M-I-S, and I even looked that up a couple of days ago when it was found out in a Bible Concordance dictionary. And Artemis, of course, is one of the so-called goddesses or god. Actually, in the Greek, the rendering of Artemis is actually Diana, the goddess Diana. So, it just goes to show you that is so bizarre, but hey, man, it hit me. And you know what? The people that, and I know, Stewart, a lot of times you've suffered so many battles, and I know somebody came in and absolutely hijacked all your software and I suppose destroyed it. I didn't never hear the end of that, but I'm supposing they did. And this is not regular folks and normal home computer systems we're talking about. This is some incredible stuff that is available to certain people, and they have the ability to do this. And but I do find that the two that hit me, one was Gog, which is literally a biblical prophetic name, in the end times, and then Artemis, which is it's one of the gods with a small g that's in the Bible concordances and throughout the Bible as one of the Antichrist spirits. So, wow, I mean, I've had a tough week or two.
Well, maybe Larry.
Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, maybe Larry, you were stomping on the toes of the idol makers there. They got after Paul because, he was cutting into their business.
It could be. That's possible.
Yeah, you're turning away people from false idols. We can't. I mean, man.
Well, it does really show too that these alphabet agencies in the spirit world are listening to all of this, and if they can find a way to break into the armor, so to speak, they're going to do it. And we've had break-ins at the house, as you know, Larry. They come in, they take something, and we discussed a lot of that, and I couldn't figure out, for example, why would they break in and take some minor item? And your comment was, that's what they really love to do because it tells you, we can get in any time we want. We're watching you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, Randy, you've had your share. How long have you had your radio show out there?
Let's see. I'm in my 22nd year.
Wow. And I suppose you've never had any trouble with it, right?
Just the FBI.
The show you and I, Larry, did back in 2008, talking about the prophecy of the son of Kenya coming in, and that was right before the Democratic convention in Denver up there, and the next day, here comes the sheriff and the FBI.
Yep,
and
I know.
Stinking FBI, they wouldn't even get out of the vehicle. So I just started yelling at them, saying, "You guys really got to repent. You really need to repent because you're going to burn in the hell for what you're doing and what you're promoting and what you're giving consent to." And the sheriff, I don't know, he wasn't too impressed. But I asked him. I said, Bruce, am I causing my neighbors any problems? Am I causing any of your officers any problems? Am I, up late at night and burning fires and loud music and blah blah blah? And no, none of that. I said, then why are you out here even? Well, they wanted to know if you had any plans for Denver. What do you mean, Denver? I said, I don't go to Denver unless I absolutely have to.
Well, the terminology, I remember that show well, and I remember you calling me the next day, and we discussed basically the Kenyan prophecy, and Stewart's well versed on that, and well, it's appearing like it is really coming true, actually.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
unfortunately. And now they've got, I'm sure you guys have heard about, now I'm not sure whether it's Denver or where it is, that they got these masks of babies. Did you hear about that? They're putting them up everywhere. Nobody knows what they're doing, and they're kind of spooky masks of young babies. And when I saw that, I thought, in that Kenyan prophecy, it was said that Obama was going to start eliminating the children. And I didn't say how. It didn't even really say it was him. It said more or less that under his rule, that the children would begin to perish, they'd get sick, they'd begin to perish, the babies, the animals would all get sick. Right. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. I sure do.
So it makes you wonder. I mean, all of a sudden we're seeing all this kind of strange behavior of people. It's kind of spooky in fact, they were even saying, well, it's kind of spooky, it's kind of scary, because we don't know who's behind it or what they're trying to say or anything like that. So I don't know. But when you hit a nerve, like you did, Randy, on that show, I mean, that's what they do. They try to intimidate.
Yes.
And I can remember when we first put out Iron Mountain Blueprint for Tyranny, speaking about intimidation, black helicopters. You remember back then, of course, they didn't exist. But we had them over the studio, hovering there 20, 30 minutes, and dive bombing across the road, throwing out water balloons, kind of looking at you until you went and got a camera. Then, of course, that they spooked and took off. And that sort of intimidation, and the average person listening probably has nothing like that ever happen. They don't have the glitches in the equipment, or outright destruction of it. I don't think they realize until you provoke Satan, he basically just leaves you alone.
That's right.
But if you're telling the truth and about any field at all that he feels he doesn't want out there, then you're going to be in trouble. I mean, that's all there is to it. And I know Randy can well attest to the trouble it can cause, because they just don't want it out there. I've never quite figured out why they're so concerned. As I've said before, the Bible says that the book is already written. They can't change it. No matter what they do, they cannot change the outcome. But I guess they're going to try, and that gets, of course, into CERN and the rest of that.
Well,
go ahead.
It comes down to when I started my radio shows, oh man, we'll wake the people up and save a nation, and well, maybe we'll wake up enough to save the state, and well, maybe with the Lord's will we'll save the county. And then it's finally dawned on me, no, it's one person at a time that wakes up, that looks around and says, oh, what's going on here? The veil comes off, and they start looking and researching and reading, and the powers that be don't want that to happen. They want the sheeple nice and calm, and and we'll let them rise up for whatever, Black Lives Matter and Occupy, and we'll let them rise up for that, but in controlled opposition. But if the truth,
I was just going to say, what's interesting, Randy, is the fact that the last 8 years almost in America, the people have been drinking so much denial and also walking in this illusionary yellow brick road for almost 8 solid years now, with a king that issues his declarations, and what's so strange is the fact that nothing but just utter delusion has settled over this nation. You know, I thought the other day, I was thinking, it's so interesting. I was watching some of this stuff, and I'll have to say this: if Trump has done nothing else, if Trump doesn't survive the next week or so, and that's not a threat, that's a question, and I want that to be on the record. That's a question. But if he doesn't, I'll say this: he at least, if nothing else, has revealed the deep, deep corruption of our political system and Washington itself. I mean, that has been revealed. It's right out in the open. He's just almost pulled it out in the open. And if he doesn't, make it through the elections and ever, he may go home. I don't know. But they've done everything they can to him. And as I've told people before, when I talked about Osiris, I wasn't talking about, somebody that, you or I would originally vote for. But, if there's a Cyrus, that's one thing. But even if he's not Cyrus the Persian, so to speak, which was a biblical character,
right.
He worshipped, another god, but he was a biblical character. If he even hasn't, reached any of that level at all or even begun that, he has caused the evil to surface, and we can now look at the entire political system. And that's just what's so interesting, Randy, too, is the fact that I've seen the blinders come off a few. Now, I'm not saying anybody's waking up, but I'm saying there's a few that are shaking their heads and they're saying, the way this thing's set up with the delegate thing in the GOP, the people really, it don't matter whether you vote or not, they're going to put in who they decide to put in. And now I'm even shockingly aware of dissent beginning, even in the Democratic Party, saying, well, it don't matter who really we vote for. It looks like really this delegate thing took over our party. So there's the evil.
Yes.
Well, there was a fellow who had gone before the Lord. I can't remember what his name was, but I remember reading his prophecy. Well, I don't even know if it was a prophecy. It was really just a statement. But he'd gone before the Lord and asking the Lord, who is Donald Trump? And the Lord said, he's my vessel to show the American people what's wrong with their system. And I would take this as a warning. Either fix it or you're going down with it. We had Ron Paul, the physician of all things. And remember where it says in Jeremiah, we would have healed Babylon, America, but she won't be healed. She refused to be healed. Well, a healer is a physician. So here comes Ron Paul, and he really did have most of the ways that they could fix America and get it started back on track. Then you have Dr. Carlson, or Carson, I guess his name is, and same thing, they didn't want anything to do with him. So along now comes Donald Trump, who's exposing everything that there is to be exposed, basically, and it makes you wonder, is this the Lord's last and final warning before this whole thing goes poof?
Yes.
We're definitely kind of at the end of things, I think. Maybe we can get into that, but when Randy was talking about that, well, maybe we could just save the county. Well, maybe we could just save one soul, and that's what it's down to now. I think it's gone beyond anything except salvation of a few. We're down to the final level of it, and you're all both absolutely right when you say that it seems like they've just turned their back on the truth. They're in so much denial now that you can't even talk to them. There's no point. What's the point? Other than to say, well, a watchman sounds the warning, and the Bible doesn't say anything about whether people are listening to the warnings or not. So, I don't know. What do you guys think about this Trump thing, though? Do you really? I don't think there's going to be another election. What do you think? I think something's coming.
I think we're on the the next huge false flag. Instead of killing 3,000 people, they, meaning the rich men of the earth, are going to kill 30,000 people. A huge false flag. But with Trump, okay, I've kind of watched this, and I've read some stuff from a roommate of his, and that in college, and he is honestly trying to awaken the American people. And the elite are really afraid of this because what it's showing is the bubbling anger, underneath here that doesn't show up. It is showing up with Trump and the people that are supporting him, the people that cast their vote for him. Mm-hmm. And this is a good thing because hopefully the anger will turn to contemplation. The anger will turn to, I need to know more about this. I need to look into this better. I need to get up off my couch and turn off the stinking TV. But I don't know, Larry. What do you think?
Well, I always think that Art Bell was right, that they're too lazy to get off the stinking couch and turn anything, even the channel, when they don't like it.
Yeah, the apathy has, I guess as a country becomes more and more materialistic, of course they obviously leave off the spiritual aspects. They leave off the contemplation that you were talking about, Randy. They don't. You hope that more and more people would finally figure out, we really do have a problem here. But we had a problem before the re-election of Obama. I mean, his record was horrible. And people still voted him in. Now, I don't know if they voted him in honestly or it was I think a lot of the elections are rigged. But, and I know also it really doesn't matter who you get in there, whether it's Republican, Democrat, Independent. They're either going to do what they're told or something happens to them. But you did mention you thought maybe a big attack coming, and here's a headline. Top jihadist claims Brussels and Paris are terror rehearsals for big attack coming to the United States. And then there's a small paragraph that says the deadly terrorist attacks in Brussels last week and in Paris last November are dress rehearsals for a coming big attack against the United States. A leading Islamic State allied militant claimed in an exclusive interview. Senior official in the Gaza Strip made the claim in a pre-recorded hour-long interview to air in the full on Sunday. Larry, you're the one who follows this more probably closely than anybody. What's really going on over there in the Middle East, and what is going on with these jihadists?
Well, Russia has come out with some more data that points the finger at Turkey, and of course that's an ally of NATO and the United States, of course, and that Turkey has been supplying for a number of years now ISIS with war materials and assistance and aid and trying to keep the Kurds off of them, and it's amazing. It somehow links in Turkey. Another interesting report that came out lately, too, Joel Rosenberg, who really has studied that region and wrote some incredible novels lately, he's got an article he just put out, he says darkness is falling over Turkey. He says Israel, and this is not news out in public, he says Israel tells its citizens to leave Turkey immediately as ISIS threat to the Jews and Christians grows daily there. And of course, at the same time, we know that Turkey is a, supplier of ISIS. And yes. Interestingly, too, let me poke this one in there. I know there's been a lot of people talking recently about Putin I guess you could say, beginning to demilitarize a little bit, or pull back some military equipment out of Syria, and that's totally wrong. Here's a DEPCA file out of Israel Analysis. It says Russia posts nuclear-capable Iskander missiles within Syria. And I actually put a photo on my blog of that. It says Russia has deployed S-400 air defense, and that S-400 is a good system. That's a big system. And Iskander-M nuclear tactical missiles at Russia's Himan military base in Syria. And at the same time, there's a report out of DEPCA file indicating that Russia is sending reinforcements and military equipment to Syria. And it says analysis of movements of warships and cargo ships from Russia to Syria indicate continued military buildup within Syria. So all the news that's been coming out on the news wire saying that Putin was pulling back and standing down and backing off, and it's not correct. The correct information from the intel people is saying that Putin's building. Now, what they don't say, too, is Putin has moved a lot of military and, you know, not only air cover, but other military up to, they had just taken Palmyra back, the Syrians have, and with Russian cover, and there's reports that Russia is going to give them air cover to actually strike Raqqa, which is something that, you know, that's their basic headquarters, ISIS headquarters.
Yes.
And you're going to begin to see reactions out of Turkey when they begin to move on Raqqa because, you know, this whole thing is really an incredible scheme. I mean, it's an incredible scheme. As I said, and I to dovetail in to what Randy said just a minute ago, I don't know if you guys saw the news report of the briefing that Obama just came out of the nuclear conference in Washington, and he told everybody that they've done such a great job in the last number of years securing radioactive material around the world and signing agreements with Iran, et cetera, that the world is a lot safer now. And I had a couple of generals come on to review that, and the generals were kind of laughing in a way and saying, what kind of delusion is this? He said, why didn't he come out and tell the American people about real nuclear weapons, Russian nuclear weapons for one thing, that have been taken out of, you know, some of the old Soviet Union and possibly given to different groups, you know, in Syria even, and the threat. And they linked the threat into what Obama had mentioned was that he was really concerned about a nuclear weapon in the, you know, something happened in the U.S. And I'm thinking, is that a clue? Is that a clue? And then Randy said what he said, and we are really ripe. And matter of fact, going into this summer and the chaos preceding the GOP convention and the Democratic convention and all this, and I'm like Stewart. I'm not looking forward to election because I don't think we'll get that far. But this summer, going into this summer, would be a real ripe time for a big false flag, and then everything changes.
Well, it's interesting you say that because here's another headline. The sum of all fears, nuclear wake-up call following the Brussels attack. And basically what they're saying is there's going to be a huge false flag, like Randy said. It's going to kill maybe 300,000 people. If, in fact, the rich men of the earth have aligned themselves against Trump and they can't stop him because of his grassroots base, and to eliminate him, you know, by assassination attempt or something, and it seems like there's more and more rumbles going on about that, so it's almost like they're trying to get some hothead to go ahead and do it. But what else would they have left? Well, they got economic collapse or, like Randy said, big false flag. Because, you know, it's not that 9/11 wasn't a huge incident and a lot of lives were lost, but it would be incomprehensible for the American people if a bomb went off in one of our big cities. Maybe it's New York, who knows. They don't mind sacrificing whatever they have to sacrifice to get their new world order. They just don't care. They have a compassion. They're just walking computers. There's no mercy. There's no compassion. I think they think it's just, Randy can correct me here if he wants, or you, Larry, too. Isn't this kind of just a satanic sacrifice to them? And the bigger it is, the more Satan likes it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They look at, the sacrifice every day of 15, 20,000 babies killed every day here in the United States.
Yeah.
So, Trump raised all this hoopla and everything on abortion, and he was right, okay? Roe versus Wade, a Texas case, and it was the law outlawing abortion in Texas charged
Yes.
the doctor. The court said, no, there's two parties involved here. There's two parties involved. There's the mother and the doctor. And you can't prosecute one without prosecuting the other. That's the bare bones basics of Roe versus Wade. If a state came forward and said, all right, there's two parties here. The doctor, we can second degree murder, and we'll charge the mother with manslaughter, or if they came in, and that law would pass muster. But no state has the cojones to step up and do that. Here we got.
Yeah, I can see why. No, they wouldn't.
With a guy I have on the radio a lot, Harmon Taylor, a former attorney down in Texas. He studied this and looked at it, and he says, if the state wrote the law where both parties were charged in the crime, that would pass constitutional muster.
Speaking about constitutional muster, I noticed we had our first split decision, and I noticed it said, now you know about this, Randy, because you're the law type person here.
Right.
That remanded it back, I guess, to the lower court.
Yeah, a 4-4 split, or even split like that, 4-4. That makes then whatever the case was in whatever the circuit court ruled, or that's the ruling that stands. Now, what that does, and I've been so busy I haven't watched it, but what that does then, if somebody brings, if that's a kind of like what we call a landmark case, and somebody then brings it in a different circuit,
right,
and that circuit disagrees, okay, then we've got a controversy. And so then that case would sit there probably and wait until we got 9 justices again.
Okay. But what, like you were saying, here we sacrifice the citizen blood, millions, and for convenience, basically. And it just makes you wonder exactly how long the Lord will hold his hand away before it comes crashing down upon the United States. Big time. How corrupt does a country have to get before the Lord strikes? He's been kind of gentle, really, so far. Who was it? Maybe Larry knows. Remember the guy that wrote the book on anytime like a governor or the feds did something that the Lord didn't like, he would reply in kind?
Oh, that was Bill Koenig. Let's see. He was talking about anything that occurred. You know, anytime that America or even against Israel, things that we might do against Israel or betray Israel as such, that there was something that would come back. You know, he talked about Katrina, the hurricane, you know, and how all that began to happen, and you know, we get struck. You know.
Yeah, and wasn't that kind of even up in Katrina? That, you know, the lives that were lost and the people that had to move equaled exactly what had gone on the, I guess it was the West Bank or something?
I think that it did, actually, and his name was Bill Koenig, and I believe the title of the book was Eye to Eye or something like that. It was close to that. But in other words, you know, you do something, you know, against what the Lord has laid down, so to speak, you know, then you'll get struck for doing that. Well, one of the interesting things was, and here's one scenario that occurred back in Netanyahu's first term, and Stewart, you'll remember this. Bill Clinton was fighting with Netanyahu way back then. And
yes.
Remember, Bill Clinton actually made a move to try to pull down Netanyahu by going after some type of woman charge or something with his wife or something. It was something about a woman or something that was brought up. And the next thing we knew, there was the Monica Lewinsky scandal that really Clinton never shook that off yet. But anything, it was basically, I think, Eye to Eye was the name of the book. But Koenig said that, you know, whenever we do something like that, whenever America does something, whether, you know, I know the American people, most of them are just, they're so drunk that they believe that anything their government, well, this is what's interesting, Stewart. I'll put it from this point. This nation literally believes that it doesn't matter what Obama does because it won't affect them, and they didn't do it. But I got news for them. Number one, the American people are the enablers of Obama and his administration, and have been for years now. And the Antichrist governments before him, but he's the most Antichrist government that has ever existed in America. And the American people being enablers of that. It's no different, you know, whatever comes down from on high, so to speak, it'll affect the people just as much as it affects the nation. Yeah,
I would always have always thought that it's not so much the leaders as it is the people, because there are two ways to look at that. That the leaders are kind of a mirror image of the people. But at the same time, what the leaders do, because of our Constitution, theoretically, we have one, they could rise up tomorrow morning and put an end to all this, and they will not, and therefore all of us get to ride through, basically, as the Lord says, any nation that forgets God is turned into hell. So we're going to have our little ride into hell here, and I think it's already begun. I really do think it's already begun. How about you, Randy?
Oh, absolutely. You know, here we got the abomination that in this meeting in the White House, not only does President Obama refuse to join the words Islam and terrorism, but the White House won't let anyone else do it either. In a video that appeared on the White House website this morning, the words of French President Hollande were censored to remove the following segment. Islamic terrorism is in Syria and Iraq, and we therefore have to act both in Syria and Iraq. So they took the video down. Yeah.
Wow. Well, excuse me. Again, though, can't the American people figure this one out? I mean, you know, I was reading an article. Go ahead, Larry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't think they want to, and I think this dovetailed back into the word you said about Babylon would be healed, but she would not. And it's just like Trump made his statement on the abortion issue, that absolutely you saw such an uproar all over this nation, and I was shocked that all the news media was just shouting with glee that he had made that statement, because now they could destroy him. And I began to think, even for what I call child murder, I don't care whether people don't believe that there's a child in the belly or not, but when it comes out, is it a child? Was it a child just before it came out? Well, of course. But there is no repentance, even in their mouth or their mind, Stewart. It's like they don't know the word. It's not there anymore. And, Stewart, what's the last time you ever heard other than Franklin Graham, say the word repentance in this nation?
Yeah, you don't hear it.
No.
It's totally lacking in modern Christian theology anyway. I mean, I don't know what, I really don't know what to even think about it. I mean, I know we were all warned, apostasy's coming. Well, I'd have to say apostasy's full-fledged and now here, with the exception of turning people into the authorities and having them killed, which is the final end result of it. But we're close to that. Wasn't it Tom Horn that was writing a book or an article about blood on the altar? And that was basically, I think, I didn't read it, but I got the impression it was about Christians turning in Christians, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I think that's right. We're getting ready to... The apostasy has been going on for 1,500 years.
Yes. With the Roman Catholic Empire, the Holy Roman Empire. Yes. And embracing all of the pagan everything. I mean, we just had Ishtar Sunday, mm-hmm. and so we got to go and kill a couple Easter bunnies for stew. Yeah, it's a fertility rite, basically. Yes. It's what it's generated into. And you're right. I mean, they've gone out in an attempt, I guess, to control the world by just softening everything up and embracing just about any pagan belief structure out there and bringing it under the wing. And I can't blame Roman Catholicism any more than the Protestant. It just seems like it's two different roads leading to the same thing. But they're all coming together, though, now. Yes, it is. This whole thing is coming together, and the remnant out there that stands and says, no, you're wrong, we can't, no, I won't be a part of that, no, I'm coming out of Babylon. The remnant is, they're going to be the ones that are turned in by their, quote, church, unquote, and said, well, no, he's not going along here with the Grand Poopah. He's not that family there, they're not. So what are we looking at a new Inquisition here? Yeah, I think you are. I don't know what Larry would think about that, but, when you've got pastors joining Homeland Security to go into these FEMA camps to comfort people, and you actually have pastors that'll do it, don't we have kind of a problem? What do you think, Larry?
Oh, that reminds me. It brings back old memories of some of the earlier movies. Chris Christopherson was in one about America with a K, and y'all remember that old movie?
Yes.
There was such betrayal. I mean, such incredible betrayal. And of course, we've seen some after that. But this is what's interesting recently. I have been shocked because, even the Pope has come out against Trump more than once, actually, more than once. and that just backs up my theory. And I tell people, Cyrus the Persian or Trump, exposing evil or whatever you want to say. It's just Larry's theory to a degree, and I know you guys agree a little bit with it, but Trump definitely is a wild card in the deck, and not only, and it just goes by with what Randy just said, the Protestants and the Catholics, and they're all together in this. Trump seems to be the greatest threat to the world right now, more than anyone in the world. And I'm thinking, my Lord, and this blows my mind, you guys, because, I tell you over and over again, and I'm sure Obama may have heard this himself, because they do record and listen to these shows, by the way. NSA records everything. I say that the last almost 8 years of Obama's term, everything he has done is how you bring a world war. Everything he's done is how you bring it, not stop it. And the most interesting thing is, no one stands up and says Obama's that great threat to world peace. Everybody, including the Pope, is saying Trump is the greatest threat. And so he's just like Benjamin Netanyahu and the ones that I've said were wild cards, in the deck, because they do exist. And Stewart, as you well know, the Lord does use them whenever I guess he chooses.
Yes, he does, and Putin's another wild card. And we got one in North Korea. I don't know if he's a wild card by design or whether he's a wild card because he's half nuts, but he's still a wild card. And how do you control? I don't know if you guys remember, but I think it was Ed Dames, Dr. Doom, in their remote viewing, said that one of the foreshadows of this kill shot of Ed's, the series, the CME series that was going to really hammer the earth and kill lots of people, was that North Korea would use a nuclear weapon in anger.
Yeah.
Isn't this what they're about ready to do? I got a headline here.
So. Go ahead.
It says North Korea will pursue nuclear and missile programs. So they're not paying any in defiance of the United States, even China at this point. They're going to pursue it.
Let me read you this article. This is off the internet.
Yes.
Actually, March 27th, and it never got anywhere. Let me read this to you. And this information came from the U.S. military and the South Korean military. After report, it says urgent. It says multiple diffuse high-energy sources detected moving in North Korea. Mobile missiles with nuke warheads. The U.S. military has detected movement in North Korea believed to be nukes mounted on mobile missile launchers being moved around the country. And matter of fact, there was another note that said that I know you're aware that the North Korean submarine had become missing. We couldn't find it anymore. But there's been a report recently, actually 3 days before March the 27th, there was a report that this North Korean sub was spotted off Venezuela, off the Venezuelan coast, and no one had any knowledge of where it was going, what it was doing there, or anything else. But when you say another wild card or crazy man, or I really do like his haircut. I wish I had that hair. I don't have that hair. See, I can't have one like that. But listen, stuff we're reading about, and Stewart, the interesting thing is he's a wild card with nukes, but he's more unstable than anybody else. I mean, you just don't know what he will do. But you're right. You're exactly right. Ed Dames, actually, and I don't know if you'd call it a prediction. That would be more like what he said. He said that he said they would set off a nuke in anger, that there would be an angry moment, they would use a nuke. And supposedly he indicated that possibly down around the actual line of demarcation or the border or whatever you want to call it, down with South Korea. But apparently we're detecting by satellite that he is moving. It may be smaller nuclear weapons, but he's moving something with a high-energy source mounted around his country. And I'll tell you what, there was a general today on the news that said that because of how Obama has ruled and his foreign policy for the last number of years, that both Japan and South Korea seriously doubt we will back them up if Ung, if you want to call him that, sets off something. And Stewart, I don't know if you remember this, or Randy, either one, but you remember in the first term, you remember Obama making a statement that we would suffer a nuclear strike without retaliating? Do you remember that?
Yes, he would absorb the first strike without
retaliation. And I've never heard he changed his mind. I've never heard he changed his mind.
Well, I do know that they have said that they would not alert anybody if a nuclear attack was coming. Yeah. That there would be no warning to the American people. That the official policy was that everybody would be better off just, I guess, getting killed where they are. Because you would have so little time. I mean, I don't know if you remember the movie Red October.
Oh, absolutely.
For Red October. Well, you remember what the sub-commander played by Sean Connery said? We're just going to hunker down off the coast. They'll never know what hit them.
Yes.
That's right.
And they're sitting out there as we speak. Well, here's one. North Korea brands China a, quote, detested enemy. In a letter to population, called on population to crush China with the force of a nuclear storm. Beijing joined U.S. calls for North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons. China will also fully implement the latest UN restrictions against North Korea.
Now, is that for public consumption, or is that going to be actual?
I don't know. It's an article in the dailymail.com.
That's the UK, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So, in other words, according to the article, China and the United States are forming a coalition against North Korea.
Well, that was in that nuclear meeting today, where they came out and China and the United States both said, give up your big firecrackers. Yeah, give up your big firecrackers and we'll send you little ones from China here. Yes.
Wow. Well, that's kind of interesting. And maybe that's one of the things that would cause this so-called leader over there to use a nuke in anger.
Yes.
Well, I'll show them. Oh, that's not so good. The war drums are beating everywhere. Now, here's one from True News, as long as we're on the kind of the war front. 2 weeks ago, Russia pulled its warplanes and bombers out of Syria, but they have quickly moved in advanced tactical missile systems and helicopters. Like Larry was saying, it doesn't seem to me that Putin has really pulled anything out. In fact, he made a comment, we can be there in a couple of hours if we have to take care of any threat. So what are we watching? Are we watching the prelude here to Ezekiel 38, 39? What do you guys think? To me, it looks very suspicious.
Well, it's what's interesting, too, today they were talking about, on the commentaries on Fox, we're really interested because of this meeting in Washington. And number one, that, a couple of people wasn't there, Putin and Ung, I guess you could say. And also, Iran wasn't represented. And what they came up with, though, was the information that Iran now has the capability of firing a nuke, missile on Israel. And that was the greatest fear. And I'll tell you, one of the greatest fears, you talk about a fear that Netanyahu has, and of course I'm not giving away secrets because this has been on Debka File and some of the other reports, the intel reports that, out of Israel over the last couple of years, is a scenario that they're very concerned about is the fact that if Iran somehow exploded a nuclear weapon in the Mediterranean off the coast of Israel, that the tsunami that came in produced by that nuclear weapon would so inundate the Israeli land and forces that any enemy could have plenty of time. They would be inundated by water. Almost all the defenses would be washed out, you could say, that Israel would have a time trying to defend itself. And so that's one of the great fears. However, there's another side of this story. A guy by the name of Beck wrote a novel. He worked for the Israeli News, and he wrote a novel. It was and he claimed it was a warning novel, and apparently it hadn't struck home with anybody, but it was called The Last Israeli. And what information is in his book, he relates to the thing we never talk about, and that is the submarines, the nuclear cruise missile capable submarines that Israel has patrolling away from Israel all the time underwater. And, they bought, I know at one time they had 7 that were active already. These were, bought out of Germany.
Yes.
And they are, like I said, they're nuclear capable. They can fire a cruise missile with a nuclear warhead. And the book that he wrote was based on a story how the major attack came on Israel and just about destroyed every single thing in Israel, all the cities. But the only thing, a couple of days after that attack, after Iran and everyone that had attacked while they were still celebrating, all of a sudden out of the water came nuclear missiles, and then all the capitals of all the Arab nations and all of the places Iran and that had so celebrated, they really didn't make noise anymore. And so it was a really telling novel, The Last Israeli, by a guy by the name of Noah Beck. And nobody listened, and I've never heard any more. But I do know that Israel now has 9 or possibly 10 of these capable submarines that they're out there. And I'm wondering, and this is just me wondering, because, for years we've heard the Samson option. We've heard about it in movies and books, and years ago especially. You don't hear it anymore, but it makes me wonder, are these submarines really the Samson option that Israel keeps hidden?
Well, I know, didn't Netanyahu said if they go down, they're taking everybody with them.
Yes.
I think it was. What do you think, Randy?
It's a powder keg that could blow up in any second. Yeah.
It really
but
is.
But it's all in the timing of the Lord too. We gotta remember that.
Well, this leads us to Isaiah chapter 17 and the taking of Damascus, which I have always felt, and I'm not telling anybody to believe any of it, but I always thought that the taking of Damascus would precede Ezekiel 38:39, because of the nations that are listed in Isaiah 17, some of them are not listed in Ezekiel 38:39, which tends to, and Syria was one of them. But one of the comments made in Isaiah 17, if I'm remembering it right, and I don't have it in front of me, but wasn't it that once this thing started, that the Arab cities would flee because they were afraid they were going to be next?
I think you're right.
So, in other words, maybe Damascus is already a ruinous heap, but the way that thing is worded, it almost does seem, and I know you and I, Larry, and I think you and I, Randy, on some of your shows speculated whether who did it. It is blamed on the children of the Lord in Isaiah chapter 17. It says, because of the children of the Lord. I don't think it's worded necessarily that way, but that's what it meant. Mm-hmm. That Damascus became a ruinous heap. But it indicates that's kind of an instantaneous, overnight attack. and then it's done, which would imply either a massive normal armament type of operations or nuclear. And when the rest of the Arab cities around about see Damascus go up, they flee their cities. They flee into the deserts. And I've often wondered, well, how long after Isaiah chapter 17, if that is actually the scenario, does Ezekiel 38:39 actually come? And it could be days, weeks, or a month or so, I suppose. But you're right, Randy, when you say that's just a powder keg ready to go off. I use the analogy of they're walking around in gasoline smoking cigars. And it's just a matter of, when one of the ends of the cigar hits the gas and away it goes. Because you're right, it is on the timetable of the Lord. Nothing like that can happen unless it's exactly where it's supposed to be. But speaking about that, how close are we? How close do you think we are to this,
Isaiah 17, starting in
Yes.
verse 12. Woe to the multitude of many people, which make a noise like the noise of the seas, and to the rushing of nations that make a rushing like the rushing of mighty waters. The nations shall rush like the rushing of many waters, but God shall rebuke them, and they shall flee far off, and shall be chased as the chaff of the mountains before the wind, and like a rolling thing before the whirlwind. And behold, at eventide trouble, and before the morning he is not. This is the portion of them that spoil us, and the lot of them that rob us.
Yeah.
So,
Doesn't that indicate almost instantaneous warfare of a major type?
yes.
It does. Mm-hmm.
So does this mean then, there's two ways you could look at that the nations of the world get involved in this conflict. And now let's go over to Dr. Doom. He just gave an interview on Coast to Coast. And he made the comment about the Middle East and fighting, and they look up into the heavens and they flee for home. That almost sounds like what you just read.
Yes. Interesting.
So I wonder, you don't suppose the Lord is going to put an end to this? Because he was very, very specific that they looked up, and what they saw scared them to the point where everybody flees. And that is exactly what you just read. And don't we have all kinds of ships over there? I know for a while China was there. Just about everybody that had ships in the sea were congregating over there. Well, you never quite hear whether they left or whether they're still around. Larry, what do you think of that?
Well, most of the carrier groups that I've heard of or kept up with, Obama has recalled and either put out, off of Korea or, other areas. But a lot of them were called back away from that area. And a lot of the craft we've had over there have been pulled back. Obama did a lot of that when he was in this negotiation with Iran. And but I do know that, I'll tell you what, right now over in the Mediterranean, most of the ships appear to be Russian, actually. And, of course, Turkey's got its fleet out there, and, there's a number of things that's going on right now.
France is there, and
France is there. That's right.
Britain is there. They've got a couple of their Harrier carriers there. So, yeah, the nations are there.
Yeah.
So if this thing were to... Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
I was just going to mention with what you said, talking about because, I think you said because of the children of the Lord or something that I've said.
Yes.
It makes me almost wonder, of course this is kind of far-fetched, but it's something to think about. with the destroyer out there, and they've basically come out without admitting it and said, especially after Chile released the photographs and such, that there is a dwarf planet, a dwarf star out there with planets, and it makes me wonder almost if something happens, and because of we all know that the Creator is a little bit jealous of His people. And His people have been under the gun, and look at all the slaughter of the people of the book, or however you want to put it, no matter what, religion they are, whether they're Jewish or whether they're the Zedis or, all these groups, there's been a total slaughter by ISIS, and of course that links in to Turkey being involved in that, and of course Syria and all, etc. But what if we're in that season of some of these flares? I could think of a few scenarios. Number one, because of the activity, the Lord, a flare strikes that region, or possibly an asteroid, piece of a comet. All this stuff is out there. It's not like, we're making any of this up. They're telling people. Matter of fact, interestingly, recently we've heard of pieces of comet hit different places, and even one, I think, it just hit Jupiter, and they actually filmed it and said, that's incredible. Yes. That looked like a piece of a comet. And so we've got what I call incoming. It's like we're in a shooting gallery, and there we are, and maybe that occurs. I know it, I believe, what is it in Joshua, the long day of Joshua or something, it talks about a battle where I guess you could say the sky fell on everybody that was the wrong people. It fell on all those and killed all those that were fighting the Lord's people. But
I think you had a term for that. You call them smart rocks.
Smart rocks, yeah. That's really impossible. And I know the Bible clearly says that God delights to do the impossible. So that smart rocks fit in that category, as far as I'm concerned. But all those scenarios are out there.
Well, it makes you wonder, because these remote viewing, he readily admits they have all kinds of trouble with their timing, but not so much with what they see. It's sort of like the bots of Cliff High, where he will admit readily that they can't set timing on it. They try, but it never works. But the events themselves, or the trends leading to those events, are quite accurate. Quite accurate. So, going back to Dr. Doom, he was very, very specific that these people are fighting, and I think he really was dealing in the Middle East at the point. And he said that they all look up, and whatever they see is so frightening that they bail out.
Well, Stewart, you remember when you interviewed Red Elk, how that he also had seen something big as the moon come in. Remember?
Yes.
And glance off our atmosphere? You interviewed him on that, didn't you?
Yes, I did, and he said the shock wave was what caused a lot of the damage. He said the same thing about Mount Rainier. Now, this is odd. We're getting off on earth changes a little bit, but he said that the Lord showed him that Mount Rainier, which we already know is rotten on the inside. I had a buddy that's a mountain climber, been up on Mount Rainier, I don't know how many hundreds of times, and been in the lava tubes in there. They go up there, I guess, the mountain climbers. And they sometimes overnight or spend several days up there. And what they do is they crawl into the lava tubes. But that mountain is basically rotten. And it has very little strength left to it. Anyway, what Red Elk said was 1/3 of the mountain blows its top. Literally rips off 1/3 of Rainier, throws it into the air, I don't know how many thousands of feet. It turns over and comes back down and plugs the hole from which it came. And he said it wasn't the volcano that did the damage, it was the shock wave that did the damage. I mean, can you imagine wind shock from something like that? Well, this is the same thing that Red Elk said he saw when this object that looked very much like the moon grazed our atmosphere and then literally bounced off it, sent tremendous shock waves all around the world, which it would, of course. And that is what did a tremendous amount of damage. I mean, you hear all these prophecies and you wonder, well, yeah, it could very easily happen. I mean, look at what happened to Mount Rainier.
True.
Not Mount Rainier, but the other one down there. What was the name of it? Mount St. Helens.
Yeah.
When it blew. But it does make you wonder with all of this. Have you guys ever heard of Dr. Patricia Green?
I'm not sure.
No. Well, this is what she claims she saw. She wrote a book called The Seven Spirits of Yahweh, and it's very, very interesting. She said she had a dream, first of all, about Barack Obama long before he was elected. Barack Obama will win the Democratic nomination, and he will be the next president of the United States. And she answered the Lord when he told her that, and he says, Lord, do you expect me to vote for a man who supports abortion and homosexuality? And his reply was, child, I did not tell you to vote for him. I am telling you he will be the next president of the United States. Barack Obama is a forked-tongued devil. Your country has been pushing for abortions and homosexuality, so I'm going to give you a president who will promote abortions and homosexuality. But be rest assured, my hand of judgment will come against your nation while he is president.
Wow.
Now that kind of pinpoints, unless there's no election, that's the other thing that Ed Dames said. I think it was George Norrie that was interviewing him. And he asked him about, well, what about this next election? And Ed Dames said, I don't want to even talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't feel there's going to be another election. I can't say why. I just don't feel there's going to be another election. And he said, I'm very worried about martial law, and I'm very worried about what's coming to the United States. So anytime you want to comment on, now I'm going to read you something. First tsunami dream. She said, all of a sudden a large wave rolled over the crest of the mountain that she was on and was heading towards me. I knew that the Atlantic Ocean had washed in as far as this mountain in North Carolina. Second tsunami dream occurred 10 days later. Now remember that Augusto has had these tsunami dreams. Remember, Larry?
That's right. Oh, absolutely.
Have you had any of those visions?
Huh?
Have you had any visions of a tsunami?
Not really as much as Augusto has. One that he saw, and it was recently, he saw a great disturbance. It was like he was in the air over the Atlantic, up in the Northeast. I think off the coast of Maryland and that region. And he said he saw a great disturbance in the water, and then a mighty tsunami raised up, and it washed in almost like, you remember the movie Deep Impact? How that piece of that comet, hit, and they sent that. It was like this, and he did not know whether it was something that was underground that had erupted that caused it, or whether maybe it was a nuclear weapon set off in the Atlantic and caused it. But he said it was all up and down the East Coast, and it was incredible. And he said it came without warning, And so that just fits in with what you're talking about, actually.
Yeah, she says, all of a sudden I saw this massive wave that was taller than the hotels and buildings. I guess she was on the beach. And it was poised to crash into the beach. In all my life, I have never seen a wave this high it towered above the tops of the buildings, and she had a third vision. Now, I think if I remember right, didn't a gusto watch Florida get just basically destroyed?
He did, and he said that it was like events. The first event took a portion of the bottom of Florida, then a later event took it on up to about halfway, and then another event in Florida was completely gone. And he said they didn't know whether this was something that occurred in the Gulf of Mexico or the Caribbean area, but or whether it was tsunami generated by, you remember Stan Deyo used to warn about, he said, when you begin to see earthquakes in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean and down in that region, he said, really watch out, because he said that'll be the beginning of earth, what we just talked about, earth changes that will be significant. And they have said that an event in the, down in that region could literally send the Gulf of Mexico over a lot of the coastlines, southern coastlines, especially Texas, Louisiana. Of course, Louisiana is almost underwater sitting there, and Florida, some of it. But, it wouldn't take much.
Well, here's what she says that the Lord told her. Yeshua spoke these words to me. And she's talking about a third tsunami vision here. This wave will hit the East Coast. Warn the people to get out. This mighty wave will devastate coastal cities and will wash inland for many miles. Florida will be decimated. Well, basically, I guess, destroyed. Washington, D.C. will be underwater. New York Harbor will flood the city. In North Carolina, the water will come as far as the mountains. The water will not go beyond the Appalachian Mountains. There are those who will not believe what you are reporting. They will perish in the wave. Millions of people will lose their lives. Nothing of this magnitude happens on the earth unless I speak it through my prophets. I have shown many of my prophets this tsunami. They are also reporting it will happen. Well, that would be Augusto, because that's what he said, if I recall right. I remember I had a dream, and I'm not asking anybody that it was a vision, but I was on, I assume it was the East Coast, and it was a pretty nice building right on the ocean front, and I remember seeing this wall of water coming in, and I knew I was going to die in it, but I woke up before it hit. So it's odd that these devastations are all targeted. Here's another one. I comment on this anytime you want. The United States of America is about to swing into a new season. At first, it will be a prosperous time. I think we've been there, but it will be short-lived. Next, it will be a season of devastation from all directions. The first devastation will hit, and when she is reeling from that one, the next will be right on its heels. And when it looks like it could not get any worse, indeed it will. This series of devastating events will cripple your nation and bring her to her knees. She will realize that she is no longer the powerful nation she once was. Look to the skies. You will see the first devastation. Isn't that what we were just talking about? Look to the skies.
And let me add this, Stewart. You remember a few years ago, I told you that, and it's been years, that I had a really incredible dream that it was so lifelike, it blows my mind. I mean, it was like I was scrambling, trying to get to high ground, and it seemed like it was a mountainous area somewhere where I'm living, actually. And there was a great tsunami. You asked me about a tsunami, and it was an inland tsunami, though it seemed like that literally almost reached to where I was standing. It was up high. I'm inland quite a ways from the Gulf of Mexico or any other waters, actually. And there's been other people, though, in this region up here, Arkansas and Oklahoma, that have had they've had dreams and visions of. And I did talk to one woman that she said that it was like deep. You remember how it talked about the abyss was opened, or the the water came from under the ground, during the Great Flood.
Yes. Yes.
The waters of the deep came up. Not
yes.
only did it rain, but the water, I guess, just come clean up out of the ground. Well, she said that it created a massive flood, that water came out of the ground. It was a dream she had, and they were running, and people were trying to get somewhere to get to something that would float, and it was just water rose so fast you couldn't stop it. And she said it didn't rain. She said the water literally came from underground, and just thousands were killed. And, there's another woman that I didn't meet her, but I know somebody that did talk to her. She's passed away now, but she said that she got on the mountain and fasted and prayed for a number of years up here in the mountains in Arkansas, and said that she saw also the ground split, kind of like, I saw that great canyon open up.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, but she saw the same thing and said that she saw a great flood of water come from the south, apparently from the Gulf of Mexico, and she said it flooded all the way up to, if you know where Broken Bow and DeQueen, you know where DeQueen, Arkansas is, if you know where that's at, she said the water came literally to that point where it receded. And, boy, that's a long way. That's a long way inland. But, there's been so many. We're talking about over the years, I don't know how many dreams and visions. And this is what's interesting, Stewart, is to me, is I've talked to really elderly, and of course I'm getting there now, but I've talked from years ago, 30 years ago, I was talking to some of the old saints and stuff, and they were telling me about dreams and visions where they were, just like you said, there's something, a flood or something coming, and they literally thought they would go through it, but they passed on and didn't. And I've seen so many people not have to experience the terror they saw. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But but the time frame we're in now, and of course our last show or two we've talked about people really do need to get their houses in order, and we're in a time frame now of scenarios that almost anything could happen, whether it's a tsunami, whether it's we're probably, according to Stan Day, are also in a season of maybe volcanic activity in our own country, in the U.S. You talked about
yes,
the West Coast, but there's also other places of volcanoes, and I just want to make the comment, for a number of years, a lot of us have been warning about the coast. Flee the coast, get away from the coast. And I remember Art Bell, George Noory, I don't know how many people have all said, Dr. Doom, it don't matter how many said it. There's been a lot of voices saying, flee the coast, get in, and do you know what, Stewart? Nobody does. Nobody does.
I think the coasts are actually, populations are growing, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's more people on the coastlines according to population than anywhere in the country, really. So if you wanted to diminish this country in some type of judgment, just track the coast. That'd do it.
Yeah.
Well, that's where the river's denial all empty into.
I got that right. Speaking about that, Randy, out your way, are the people, you're kind of in a rural area and kind of the mountainous areas, or you're getting into them. What's the attitude of the people out there? I mean, are they just as comatose as what we have here in the Midwest, or the East Coast, or the West Coast?
Yes. There's a remnant. Put it that way. There's a remnant that's wide awake to what's going on. Heather, my wife, she goes, she does most of the shopping and stuff, and she her comments that she'll go into the store, and it's like the people in there are either under sticker shock of the cost of the foods and stuff, but they're just kind of in a zombie-like zone out, okay? Eyes glazed over, But as I come across more and more, there's a remnant here that's wide awake and know what's going on. But by and large, the majority are sound asleep. And I hate to say that.
Well,
but I wanted to shift a little here.
Yeah, go ahead.
To your Omega Code DVD.
Yes.
And coming up next year in 2017. And it's also the 500th year of the Reformation. 2017. Which is a jubilee of a jubilee of a jubilee of a jubilee.
Jubilee, yes.
And so on the Lutherans, Martin Luther, but the Lutherans and the Roman Catholic Church have been putting their heads together and talking back and forth, and been going through a study of the declaration they plan to sign next year in 2017, saying, the Lutherans saying, "We're so sorry, Mother Church. Please welcome us back in." I mean, that's the gist of it.
Wow.
But, here we have this 500 year, and then your Omega Code in 2017, where it ends the cycles of Israel. That
when I was doing that, I could hardly believe that 120-year period could have so many cycles within it.
Yes.
10-year, 20-year, 30-year, 40-year, 50-year, 70-year cycles, all terminating on very key, very important dates in Israel's history. And then, you start looking at that, and you say, well, okay, maybe it proves something, maybe it doesn't. But then you take the mathematical viewpoint on it, where the odds are quadrillions, literally, to one, that could all be coincidental. You could take one cycle and say, yeah, so what? But when you take all those cycles, and then you add in the 6,000-year doctrine of the early church, and the 120-year doctrine from Noah, then it becomes quintillions to one. And, when I put that thing out, nobody wanted it.
Yeah.
So, it's like you're beating your head against the wall trying to warn people, and I guess you come to the realization maybe they don't want to be warned. Like you were saying, Randy, and you, Larry, they're drinking so much denial tea now that they're beyond the comatose stage. They're in the zombie stage of near death.
Yes.
And so can you wake people like that up, or does the Lord have to do something like this, look to the skies, look to the seas, and then look to the earth? What does it take to warn people? Anybody got any suggestions?
It reminds me, Stewart, a lot of, when you think about Noah, and, and naively, in my younger years, and then even into my later years of reading the Bible, it seemed to me that 8 people was really a ridiculously low number of remnant or survivors. I thought, this is ridiculous. 8 people? That's the littlest number I ever heard of, But, as time went by and I grew older, and I warned, and you guys have done the same thing. Years and years we've spent warning, and here we are even today on this show talking about a remnant, and I guess Randy's done give up pretty much on the county, and he might be in for the community. Maybe that don't even work. It might be down to Randy and his wife at that location. So I'm beginning to rethink my ridiculously low number of 8, and makes me wonder. I was so amazed, Stewart, when your Omega Code came out. Matter of fact, I bought a few extras and gave them to people. And I really never even got any comments back from them. And I wondered about that because I thought it was the most intriguing. I thought that Omega Code was incredibly intriguing. And I knew you said that really to solidify where you thought things were going, we had to have Isaiah 17 as a marker. And, of course, even when that first came out, the Omega Code, we figured Isaiah 17 might be right around the corner. And it wasn't, but...
Well,
we're further down that road. We're so far down that road now, past that even, and that Omega Code still, I believe it's true.
They're just doing Damascus as a block at a time.
That is true.
Maybe that's why they finally nuke it. Maybe they hope they can melt all the ruins into a big heap and let it go at that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But when I did the research on that, it was, to me, it was just absolutely incredible that you could look at those cycles and not see the hand of the Lord, an external force orchestrating the whole thing from beginning to end, and that Israel indeed is the time clock for the entire planet. And probably that's why, even if it's subconscious, the world basically hates Israel. Maybe they know that that's what it is. Maybe they know that Israel is actually the time clock, and they're looking at their maker whether they want to or not.
Well, Stewart, now that you mentioned that, let me tell you this. I've interviewed Dan Gordon. You've heard me talk about him.
Yes.
He wrote the novel, The Day of the Dead, Book 1 Gaza, and he's in a couple of weeks he's got a brand new one coming out. Now the Day of the Dead it deals with Israel fighting Hamas, and the new one coming out, I don't know what the title is, but he went from talking about the tunnel systems used by Hamas and even ISIS is working those tunnel systems, and he's got a new one coming out and has been trying to warn America about its southern border and the drug tunnels and all those tunnels, because he said that ISIS and the different groups are already in Mexico and utilizing these tunnels to come under our border, and it's wide open. And of course, it appears the Obama administration is going to keep it that way. But his new novel coming out deals with massive attacks coming out of Mexico using these tunnel systems and attacking mostly Southern California and the West Coast and et cetera. But one of the interesting things, Dan Gordon is also an officer in the Israeli reserves, and I asked him directly, I said, because he knows Netanyahu and most of the military over there, and I said, what are you guys really trying to do? I mean, you've got Hezbollah just almost on top of you any moment. You've got Iran pushing. You've got Syria's mess. I said, you've got Hamas and all the Palestinians and all this terror going on. What is your goal? What is Israel's military and Israel's political machine? What is your goal? What is your goal? What are you trying to do? And, I was expecting an answer from Dan. Maybe a scenario where they're going to defend Israel and maybe conquer their enemies, etc. But here's what I got, okay? And this is really interesting because, I've shared with you guys how that, through Richard Shaw and others, and I've even talked to Eliyahu Rip, over there in Israel, and Glazerson and some of these others, and of course they've done Torah codes over there for a long time before they even did them here. When Drosden began them, kind of, they actually began to do them more and more, and then they got the Israelis began to do their own, and I found out that the Israelis they've run the Torah code, they've run all the prophecies of the Bible. I mean, they have really prepared the end times, what they call the end times, which we're getting close to right now, right this very minute, actually. They prepared for these things, and I was expecting some type of big defense spigot or whatever. And you know what Dan Gordon said to me, and it's just what you just said, Stewart. You mentioned that Israel was a big time clock. Dan Gordon said to me, he said, we are playing for time. That simple, Stewart. That was his answer. Dan Gordon said that all Israel, including the government of Israel, is playing for time. I think they already know from the Torah codes, the prophecies, the scriptures, the extra books or whatever they want to look at it, and and matter of fact, I even heard they've researched the bots for these type of things too over there, because it's part of their intelligence gathering, system. But they know where this is going. They know where this is headed. Even like Netanyahu said, we may go down, but you'll remember us. And no more Israeli Holocaust or Jewish Holocaust. We'll go down, but there was a Samson, and I think that was that woke me up a little bit when Dan Gordon said we are all Israelis are playing for time. It's simply that simple. It's not a big thing. It's that simple that this thing is playing out. We're towards the end of it, and all of these things are happening, and the fulfillments are beginning to fulfill all around us. Maybe not like we thought it might, but it's still happening, and it's like Israel really is a clock, and that blows my mind. I'll just mention this a second. There is a Torah code that they ran. It's called the Watchmaker, and because somebody had wrote a book about the watchmaker. In other words, the blind watchmaker. It's like God is put together all this like a fine-tuned clock. This whole everything about us, this whole world and its system and the universe and all, it's operating on a time frame, and it is ticking down. And what's so interesting is I don't have that Torah code right in front of me, but it said on there. Let's see. No, I don't have it in my hand, but it says on there, the watchmaker is alive. I am. It says that in the Torah codes. So I'm shocked, and they're playing for time.
Yeah. Well, you remember David Flynn, and he said the temple at the center of time. He wrote that book, and he suggested that an attempt to measure, I'm going to read from a little article here, the size of the temple of God from Revelation 11:1 leads us to the number 2016 as central to the idea of the Jewish temple. In Bible prophecy, a temple should be present by the midpoint of Daniel's 70th week. Flynn's work concludes, based on all the numbers, it looks more and more clear that the time between the end of 2012, they're talking about December 21st, 2012, the Mayan end date, which was not, by the way, the end of the world, it was just the beginning of a new cycle, and the beginning of 2020 will encompass the last week of Daniel. Well, that's basically, I wondered, when I did the Omega Code, was 2017 the beginning of a 7-year period? Midpoint of a 7-year period? Or exactly what? Well, now they're taking a look at the Mayan date of December 21st, 2012, much more seriously than they ever did before. And you guys are familiar with Luis Vega? He does all those charts.
No,
anyway, he does all those charts, and it's fascinating what he's come up with. He said the Great Pyramid points to the year 2016. Well, 2016, in our calendar, didn't we just move in, Randy, to 2017 on the religious calendar of Israel?
Next month.
It's next month.
Is Passover.
Oh, that's right. Passover. You're right. Yes. So around April 22nd to the 25th, we actually are going to be moving in to the year 2017, and we don't know which calendar the Lord is using, for sure. But I've read a lot of stuff on the Mayan date of 2012, and everybody kind of poo-pooed it and said nothing had happened. But there was a star sign in the heavens that Louis Vega found that would indicate to the contrary, that we did, in fact, pass into a very, very special time, the final period of man's probation on Earth.
Well, I'll tell you what, Stewart. I was just going to tell you this. They've been running some Torah code, that came up talking about Messiah 2016, but the Torah code seems to indicate he is coming. It's still he is. However, 2017, they found new data, and from what I've heard, they found something in 2018, but they're not going to talk about it. So
really?
I think this fits in. I think this is all fitting into the Omega Code. But one of the interesting things too is I talked to Richard Shaw about the some Torah Code research they've done on 2012, because a lot of them were, originally Richard Shaw tried to do a Torah Code 2012 documentary. And, things didn't work out right. There was no money. He couldn't get the research going. And so he wound up, I sent you a copy, Stuart, I think, of that, the Torah Code End of Darkness that he did, finally.
Yes.
Remember?
Yes, I did get that.
And anyway, what's interesting, though, is he thought that something might really happen in 2012, but they found the term delay in a 2012 Torah Code, the term delay. And you and I talked about that a number of times. That,
yes.
Like you said, it's like this is everything. There's a heavenly agenda involved that we don't see, and it's like that time clock is moving forward, and nothing happens till it's time, really. I mean, it really just doesn't. But at the same time, there was a report that did come out, I think Tom Horn put it out, indicating that they found a little more data on the date, the Mayan date, and they thought that the Mayan date 2012 was accurate. However, that what it represented and the reason there was nothing past that was because it changed into another age in this time frame and began, I guess you could say, it's almost like the overlap. We go from grace to the millennium. And
yes.
It's a separation there, and they didn't understand the separation. But, of course, I don't ask anybody to believe all that,
Well, was it the bots or was it the remote viewers or both that couldn't see beyond, at first, 2012?
The remote viewers, yeah, they couldn't.
It was blocked, they said.
Yes.
Huh. Well,
and I'll tell you another interesting thing. I don't know if you've heard it, but Ed Dames, I recently got a book of his that was really intriguing, and most people don't know anything about it. It's called Tell Me What You See, and it's a revealing of some of the stuff they have remote viewed in groups and not talked about. And, like I say, I'm not telling anybody to believe this. It's remote viewing, and I'm not a big supporter of remote viewing. I know the Lord can take you places, but, but then again, you never know. There are some accurate things. But one of the things that he said was they did a remote viewing of what they wanted to find out. And this has never been told, I don't believe, on a radio show, but it's in his book. They remote viewed the taking of Jerusalem and the removal of the Ark of the Covenant. And they tried,
really?
And they saw, yes, they did. And they tried to see what happened to the Ark, where the Ark was taken. And they saw some of the priests, and they saw the activity around the Ark, and they saw it during the big and major attack and all of that. And they began to see the Ark being moved. But guess what? He said that their view was blocked each time. They were never allowed to see where the Ark was hidden or taken during all of that, and said that somebody said, well, what was blocking you? And he said it wasn't human.
So the Lord has his secrets.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now Ed needs to realize that that was the Lord, and he needs to fall on his face and repent and accept the Lord Jesus Christ.
I can't. Well, I don't know what his actual belief structure is. I've never been able to quite figure out. I've got some of his videos. They're very, very interesting. He's very sincere in what he does, but I also notice it's aged him considerably. You talked about that, Larry, when these guys they really sort of get into trouble.
Well, they do, and spiritually, a lot of their remote viewers have got into trouble. Remote viewing, Paul, talked about it, in the body or out of the body. I don't know, but boy, I was doing something else. Now that's paraphrasing, of course. But remote viewers, if they do it outside the Lord, or don't know the Lord, or not protected by Him, when you're taken somewhere, and I know, Stewart, you've been taken places, in some kind of experience, and I have too, and I never had a problem. I was protected. It was either angelic presence or some of my experiences was the Lord was there Himself, and I knew who He was, and there was always a protection. But the remote viewers, a number of them, have got into trouble. Sometimes they would come back to their body after they had gone out to remote view, and something else was there. Now I think that something else was a demonic entity, had taken up residence, because when they came back, they had real troubles, mental troubles, all kind of troubles. They also had trouble sleeping sometimes. Their sleep was disturbed, and some of them said that, of course, what you don't hear the tales about. Now in Ed's book, he talks about some of them having troubles in their sleep, and they were attacked by, I know nobody's talked about this, but China has had remote viewing programs. Russia has had remote viewing. The Soviet Union even had them, and so sometimes they were attacked. There's instances Ed has I guess chronicled in his books where certain people in the government, and it even got to the point where some leading people in previous governments had problems where they call it remote sensing now, or remote influencing, where they used to it just simply remote viewing, but they come, it's where a spy can come in a spirit and actually try to, read you in your sleep and deal with you in your sleep and your dreams and pull out information and data. And Ed even had, and he chronicled this in his book, but he didn't ever talk about it on radio. He even had some Secret Service people come to talk to him because Secret Service was concerned that they might try to remote influence the president or some of his cabinet or key members. And so, all of this, the American people don't have a clue. This has been going on for years. This is not new, And of course, everybody poo-poos it. And when Art Bell was talking about some of the stuff going on, I know everybody said blah, blah, blah. But, Art really did. He revealed a lot of stuff if people listened. And, of course,
that's why they got rid of him.
Up. Yeah, he finally, I think he just gave up. You can fight him so long, and that's, it gets too much.
Randy, agriculture. What's going on out there? What kind of a year? I know you're really into this agricultural area. What are your farmers saying? What's coming down the pike?
They're looking at total depressed prices. The cost of their inputs continue to rise, even with $40 oil. It's whatever it is now. It doesn't look good at all. The one area where farmers are trying to, diversify, but we're talking small time here. Diversify and sell, locally, farmers markets and stuff like that. They're able to receive a decent retail price.
Okay.
Your major farm commodities, corn, wheat, cotton, all those prices are going to be depressed. And still we're getting...
Yeah, go ahead.
We're still getting the reports of the farmers going into the bank and saying, we need to get the operating loan, and the banker's looking, and I said, well, put the numbers together, and the numbers aren't. A lot of guys are walking out with no operating loan for this planting season.
So what are they planning to do? I'm looking at this from the 2-year, 5-year famine.
Right.
So what are these guys going to do?
Well, a lot more of them are going to go out of business. More land will lie fallow, and it doesn't look good for agriculture. And one of the reasons, well, I grew up on a farm and still have my hands in it some, but one of the reasons is God's economic plan. His economic system is the small, self-sufficient family farm.
Yes.
And we've totally gone away from that. We've gone away from just weights and measures and money. And so this is just a judgment. I mean, a total judgment. Because the powers that be, the government, the USDA, and everything else, they said, well, we don't need farmers. We don't need agriculture. We'll just go wherever in the world we need to go to get our food. So, here we got China buying Smithfield Foods. Now it's coming out, they're going to ship the live hogs, okay? They're going to put them on a ship them to China, process them there, and turn around and ship them back to us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that makes real good sense. You bet.
That's real logical move there. Well, the reason I bring this up, so the locals are going out of business. Are the big boys coming in and buying up the land, or is this going to be foreclosures and then turn it over to the United Nations, or how is that? What do your boys out there really think is going on if they're looking at the future at all?
Land is moving. I mean, it's being bought up.
Saudi Arabia is buying a lot of it.
China is buying land.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Saudis are buying land. They know that this food situation is going to be, horrendous, put it that way. In your last two prophetic insiders about the preparation,
yes,
folks need to get that and read through that and get prepared. But, the farmland, the land itself is appreciating. And, it's getting bid up at auctions and stuff. The powers that be, the rich men of the earth, are buying land. I mean, they're running out of the casinos in Wall Street, and because they know, and they know that this is all going to come crashing down. And land is a good thing to have because it's not going to go away.
Land, gold, and silver, I suppose, but you can't eat gold or silver, but you can grow something on your land, can't you?
Yes.
So are they worried, though, about an international takeover then? I mean, if you've got Saudi Arabia and China and whatnot buying up all this farmland, what do they intend to do with it?
Well,
they just going to let it go fallow?
No. They'll end up harvesting it. They'll end up planting and harvesting it, but the food will sit on a ship and head over there to feed China, Saudi Arabia, etc.
I don't know if you guys know it, but China has purchased up here in Arkansas and some of these aquifers that they produce a lot of spring water where they bottle it. Some of the major supplies up here are being bought by China, and they own them now.
They're buying up water rights then.
Water sources,
basically.
That's right.
Well, if you buy up all the water rights, then you control them, right?
Oh, yeah.
So this would have to go under Deuteronomy chapter 28 as a curse. Just one more of the curses.
That's true.
That's coming against the United States. Wow. Well, that's
here's
kind of
an email.
interesting.
Smithfield Foods sending hogs and chickens. Many chickens. Let's see. Recently learned that Starkist tuna is now owned by Korea and is in big conflict with U.S. concerning quality, safety, and records, which Korea refuses to produce.
So
let's see.
Charlie the tuna's in trouble then.
Yes. Let's see. Albertson's 4-day special of 4 bags of frozen tilapia fish, and let's see, it's farm raised, and small print says China. So, we don't care about our most basic industry of any nation is agriculture.
Yes.
And the powers that be in the government could care less because, they figure someone else. I wanted to throw in one thing here. Coming up April 12th, Ty Bollinger and that series on the truth about cancer that ran last year, I think in November, is running it for free again on April 12th. And the folks can go to thetruthaboutcancer.com and sign up there. And there's 9 hours worth, but they can sign up there, and it's well worth watching. It's well worth watching.
Well, I'm glad
and then
you brought that up.
Here's the other breaking news, guys. This just came up. They just had a declaration of peace throughout the world. And they're quietly shooting everyone opposed.
Well, that's what it's going to be like. Yeah,
yes,
got to have peace. Well, to a communist, peace means that there are no not communists around.
Yes, there's no dissent.
Well, the question we're kind of waiting for, the question we're kind of watching for lately is if there are no elections, will Obama be literally king of America? And then America's only hope would be if he decides to set his designs on the world as the Secretary General of the UN.
UN, yeah, exactly. Say, before we close, we've got about a minute left. Larry, how do they reach you?
The quickest way is to just go to my blog, LarryWTaylor.org. That's LarryWTaylor.org.
Okay, how about you, Randy?
They can catch my radio show Wednesday, Thursday, and then reruns at AmericaNewsNet.com. AmericaNewsNet.com. So, what do you guys want to do my show with me next Thursday? I'll call you off air on that.
Yeah.
That would be fine. Yeah.
Anyway, we are coming to a close, and don't forget Night Shadows membership. We have a lot of stuff up there for people to see. Free part, and there's a pay part. And we sure hope to have you. Anyway, thank you guys for coming on. We had I think, a really good show tonight, and we'll see you soon.
Yes. God bless. Hang in there, guys.
Yep. Take care.
God bless.
Good night.